All right, it is 10 o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started here this morning. Welcome to Safety at Home with Alzheimer's San Diego. Get situated here. So welcome. My name is Amy Abrams, and I am the Director of Education with Alzheimer's San Diego. And I am delighted to be co-presenting this session today with my colleague, Jean.
Hi, everybody. Good morning.
And by the way, me being in full color and Jean being in black and white don't read anything into that. It's just a strange quirk of her webcam that we haven't been able to figure out. We're going to get Jean back in full color just as soon as we can. But
oh yes, I'm kind of tired of being just black and white.
A classic beauty, black and white. Yeah. So we'll get started here today. I want to tell you a little bit about how we're going to be running the Zoom webinar here, a video conference, I should say, if anybody is not familiar with how this works. We have everybody set to be on mute, but something that I've learned about Zoom is that sometimes you can come off of mute. So we'll be doing our best to keep an eye on the participant panel, to keep everyone muted, as well as to turn off videos to reduce background noise and distraction. But you can also change those settings yourselves. We will be using the chat function to submit questions. That helps keep things a little sort of quieter in terms of background noise and distraction. But you are welcome to submit questions as we go. If you haven't found it already, in your control panel, the little black bar where your mute button is and your video button, you should be able to locate something called chat. If it's not readily visible, you can find it in the More menu. And we have chat set so that you can send a chat to everyone. And if you do that, we will all see your question. Jean and I will both be monitoring the chat as we go along here, and we will be taking some pauses to answer questions along the way. So we won't be responding while we go, but we'll see them coming in, and we'll do our best to respond to as many as we can. We may not be able to get to all of them, depending upon how many questions you have. But please do know that our team remains available for one-on-one questions, consultation. Our phone number and our website are at the bottom of every one of these slides. So if a question is coming up that we don't get to today, or it's on another topic, please know that our social work team is available. This program is being recorded. Just want to let everyone know that only our videos should be on, so we're the only ones on camera, and the slides and the sound is what's being recorded, not you or the chat. So just want everyone to know that. If you would like a copy of the PowerPoint slides from which Jean and I are speaking today, we are always happy to send those out. Just send an email to that address that you see there, education@alzsd.org. We'll be happy to get that to you. There will be a recording of this session made available on the education page of our website shortly, within the next week or so. And if you didn't hear my introduction earlier, just want you to know that we have a member of our volunteer tech team with us on the call today. Her name is Chelsea. Chelsea, I'm going to unmute you for a second. Can you say hi to everyone?
Hi, everyone.
Hi. We're so happy to have Chelsea with us. This is a new program that we have at Alzheimer's San Diego. Zoom and GoToWebinar and all of these programs are really new to all of us. And we know sometimes you manage to get into the class, but you might be having some difficulty while you're here with one of the settings, or you want to change your view, or whatever it might be. Chelsea is here, and she's here to help. So in that chat, you can send Chelsea a private message, or just send a message however you can. Chelsea's going to be keeping an eye on that chat as well, and if you're in need of some help, she can chat with you or potentially even give you a call to talk through. Sorry, somebody I'll try to figure that out. Okay. So please bear with us here today. We're all still adapting to this new online world, but we're doing the best we can here. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and mute everyone again. Okay. All right. So let's get going. Here's our agenda for the Safety at Home program. We're going to talk briefly about dementia and the physical and cognitive symptoms of dementia that impact a person's safety awareness, why safety is such a concern for people who are living with dementia and their care partners. We'll talk about ways to reduce various types of risk, including falls, household injuries, medication, misuse, elder abuse, wandering, and a few others as well. And then we will spend some time talking about community safety resources that are available. So we'll start with a short overview of, just to make sure we're all sort of using the same terminology and have the same foundational understanding of Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia and how those symptoms affect a person's safety awareness. So in brief, the word dementia does not refer to any particular condition, disease. It is not one specific thing. It is this group of symptoms that we use the word dementia to describe a group of symptoms that are caused by an underlying medical condition. So that medical condition is often Alzheimer's disease, but it may be due to a variety. There are dozens of different types of dementia. So dementia will impair a person's cognitive function, their memory. It will cause changes in their behavior, their thinking, and the way they process information. And the symptoms are significant enough that they interfere with normal daily function. So Alzheimer's disease is one of those common causes of dementia. It's a progressive disease that results in brain cell death. It is neurodegenerative. So brain cells die as the disease is progressing. The person to person, the progression of the disease, how long it takes, how severe the symptoms will be, and what type of symptoms the person will have can vary widely. And Jean will be giving you some examples of what these symptoms might look like. And again, a reminder that we tend to use the terminology Alzheimer's disease and other types of dementia. But when we're talking about dementia, we're not always talking about Alzheimer's disease specifically. So we are intending to be inclusive here in this program. Make sure I've got. Okay.
Hi there. So I can talk now. That's good. So, so what I'll be talking about in the next few slides is just how the dementia symptoms are affecting some of these different domains that you see here on the left side of the screen, and what that translates to in terms of safety for a person living with dementia. So we'll start with memory loss, which is, you know, certainly the domain I think that we are all most familiar with. We know that people with dementia have poor short-term memory, and they have what we call that rapid forgetting. This is why they are asking questions, oftentimes the same question over and over again. Well, translate that short-term recall, that rapid forgetting, to issues of safety. Think about medications. If you've forgotten you took your morning medications, you're a person with dementia and you go back in the kitchen and you think, oh, I need to take my medication. So you may be taking your medication multiple times, or you might not be taking it at all. And difficulty completing familiar tasks. And so, you know, to start some lunch for yourself in the kitchen, and putting a pot on the stove with something in it and starting up the burner, and then forgetting that you had started that burner, and And in fact, whatever's in the pot is burning, and there is potential for burning hands, or, obviously starting a fire even too. So that's some of the things that are happening safety-wise with regards to memory loss. In the areas of judgment, what we are seeing with people living with dementia is increased impulsivity. And when I was thinking about this while I was preparing for this webinar yesterday, I was thinking, what would be a good example of that? And I thought for a period of time, and then I recalled a family that I worked with where the grandmother had dementia. And an example of impulsivity with her, what she was doing that was a safety concern, was she was walking to, it was kind of multi-layered. She was walking to the bank and withdrawing fairly large amounts of cash. Well, they were large amounts, like $1,000. But then she was either on her way to the bank or on her way home. She was flagging down strangers to ask for rides to the bank. So think about that. That's, she's impulsivity. She wants to go to the bank and get some money, and she's just flagging down somebody to hitch a ride with. So a good example of the kind of impulsivity and poor decision-making that can occur. With regards to orientation, difficulty tracking the passage of time is actually a pretty common feature for folks with dementia. And an example here is that, maybe you as a care partner to your person with dementia, you're going to run out, especially in this time. Maybe you've got to make a quick trip to the grocery store to pick something up, or to go to the drugstore and pick up a prescription. So you're telling your person with dementia, I'm just going to be a minute. I'll be right back, 15 minutes, and I'll be back. Well, for a person living with dementia, 15 minutes may, in their mind, translate to, they might think you've been gone for hours and hours. And so they may be seeking you. They may think, oh my gosh, I haven't seen my care partner for hours. I need to find her. So they're leaving the house, looking for you, wandering and getting lost. So that's definitely a safety concern. With regards to changes in behavior, oops, I'm sorry. I went ahead a little too much. With regards to changes in behavior, just as a part of normal aging, we really don't expect to see and wouldn't see any changes in behavior. But for people with dementia, that often happens, and we can just see people who maybe have normally been really kind and gentle and soft-spoken becoming angry and upset and easily triggered in terms of some kind of emotional outburst. How does that translate to safety? Well, it also leads to poor decision-making. May lead to somebody, if they're angry with you, to storming out of the house, or raising their fist, or grabbing a knife to tell you to stop it. And it's because of this instability in the emotions. For sure, folks with dementia are much more easily confused or upset when routines are disrupted. And we'll speak about this a little bit later on. Most certainly, trying to keep a regular routine seems to be something that's very good for folks with dementia. That kind of structure really helps them in terms of being able to kind of keep a more of an even keel in terms of their emotions and behavior. Physical abilities are changing also with people with dementia, and it's because of the changes that are going on in the brain. And this is leading to some changes in balance, strength, and mobility. Now, some of that happens just as we're getting older as well, but it is to a greater degree in people with dementia because of the damage that's being done to the brain. And this, in terms of safety, leads to, for sure, problems being with falls, being at higher risk for falls. And that's something that we'll talk about again a little bit later on in terms of some things you maybe can do not only for yourself, but for your person with dementia in terms of working to maintain balance, strength, and mobility. I want to mention just quickly loss of fine motor skill because, we're talking about these fingers for fine motor skill, at least in the hands. And what I want you to think about in terms of safety for your person with dementia is, what if this is a full cup of really hot coffee and I have dementia? Maybe I'm going to be wobbly like this. Maybe I don't have as good a grip on it as I should. Or what about if I'm using a knife, a sharp knife to cut, and I don't have good control in this fine motor skill because of the dementia? So there's some safety issues there as well. With regards to the senses, we know that people with dementia do have some definite changes in their visual field and their depth perception. And one of the things that we know is that people with dementia, as the dementia is progressing, their field of vision gets smaller. So it starts to be kind of tunnel vision or actually what we call scuba vision, meaning that all this stuff outside of my hands, I'm not seeing as a person with dementia. Now, if I've got this type of vision and I'm still driving, what does that mean? Well, it means I'm not seeing any of that traffic that's all beside me or behind me. If I'm walking, I'm not aware of these things that are behind me. Also means I'm not aware of what's down. So maybe there's a curb there, or maybe there's actually more than a curb. Maybe it's a big drop off that I don't see. And so I trip and I fall, or I make, unsafe decisions while driving because of this reduced field of vision. We also have decreased recognition of sensory information. And so how does that translate to safety issues? Well, here's the thing, and understand that it's the connections between the brain and our sensory organs. So it might not be that my nose is not working, but what my nose is smelling and how my brain is identifying that odor is getting mixed up. So, well, what if it's, some kind of concerning odor? For example, I smell something burning. Our brains are actually pretty fantastic organs because, for most of us, think about it, we smell something burning, we're usually able to say, oh, it smells like toast. Maybe my husband has burnt the toast while he's making breakfast. Or it's like, oh gosh darn, I left that pot of oatmeal on the stove, I better go run and get that. Or sometimes we smell it and it's like, I don't have anything on the stove, nobody's making toast, I smell something, well, I better find out what this is. This is a fire smell. Maybe it's a fire in my house, maybe it's a fire in the neighborhood. So, all these things are being instantly kind of figured out between our sensory organs and our brains. And this is what is not occurring for people with dementia, which is why, things like that happen. You have burnt items on the stovetop, or, somebody who potentially takes, maybe a can of, let's just say, Lysol. I'm sure there's plenty of cans of Lysol spray in houses these days. Well, what if you're somebody, this would be me, I like to do a quick spray of hairspray on my hair to keep all these unruly curls in place. Well, a can of Lysol in a bathroom wouldn't be unusual, right? Well, if I'm a person with dementia, what if I take that can of Lysol and I spray it all over my face and my hair? That's not going to be very pleasant. And, you know, I mean, there can be some real consequences to some of these potential accidents or safety issues that can happen.
Okay, I do. Thank you, Jean. I have one question that's been asked. That's a good one. I'm going to try to do something tricky here. Let me see if I can.
Don't be too tricky.
I know. Can I do it? Can you see this?
Yes. Major neurocognitive disorder. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just wanted to put that on screen so you could see that and you didn't have to just listen to me say it. I got a question about how the use of the word dementia versus this term. So the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is the big book that people use for making mental health diagnoses, that professionals use for making mental health diagnoses, it now in its latest edition refers to dementia. We now technically use the term major neurocognitive disorder. And that was changed in an attempt to try to address some of the stigma that exists around the word dementia. So in our Dementia 101 class and our Take Charge program, in those classes where we go more into the real nuts and bolts of Alzheimer's disease and the various types of dementia, we do often share this terminology. And if anyone has heard it and has questions about it, I wanted you to know what it is. So major neurocognitive disorder is sort of the new medical terminology used for the word dementia. We don't really use it here because it's not terminology most of the rest of the non-medical world is using, but we want to explain that. Mild cognitive impairment is a different diagnosis wherein a person doesn't quite meet criteria for dementia. All those symptoms that Jean just went through, if a person doesn't have symptoms in 2 or more of those domains, they just have symptoms in one area, or those symptoms are not significant enough to interfere with daily function, then they might get a diagnosis of what's called minor neurocognitive disorder, also known as MCI, mild cognitive impairment. So just wanted to explain some of that terminology. I'll take this off here now. Okay. Any other questions before we move on? Okay. We'll keep us going then. Great. So we're going to talk next about some nuts and bolts, some ways to reduce the risk of some of these safety concerns that we addressed at the beginning of the program here. I just want to sort of address the philosophy that we're working with here when we talk about safety in people who are living with dementia and their care partners, both at home and in the community, the concepts that underlie what we're talking about. So prevention is what we're after here. Controlling as much as we can about the person's home environment, whatever that may be, even if it's a temporary home environment. Prevention means controlling those things that you can't, right? And we do as much prevention as we can. Everything that we're talking about here today is about preventing, reducing risk. But we also have a lot we absolutely cannot control about, of course, the progression of the symptoms, the changes that are happening in the person's brain, but also just a lot of the things that exist in their environment. There's really only so much we have control over in all things, really. And so adaptation is the other part of what we're talking about here today, making adjustments in the environment, making adjustments in our daily activities and how we do them to address and sort of adapt to the things that we cannot control in the environment. So our whole premise here, this is based on the concept of what's called harm reduction, right? Risk is a part of life, and it's a part of life for all of us. Every time we get in a car, we go for a walk, we walk around our house, we get out of bed in the morning, right? You risk an injury when you step your foot right on the ground first thing in the morning. Risk is a part of life. And there is a concept that we really believe in here called the dignity of risk, right? That we can't put people with dementia in bubble wrap and just, sort of set them in a room somewhere where they can't get hurt, because risk is a part of living. We are trying to do as much prevention as we can. We're making those key adaptations, but we also have to let people live with the dignity of some risk. So just want to kind of name that and talk about it before we get going here. One of the very common questions that I've received over my years as a social worker and conversations we have all the time with our families here at Alzheimer's San Diego is this question of, is my loved one or am I safe to be at home by myself? Now that could mean safe to live by myself, to live independently without another person being there 24/7. Or it could also be a question of, am I safe to just be alone for short periods of time, right? While my partner goes to work all day, or when, my caregiver leaves in the evening and then I spend the overnight by myself. Or maybe we're even just talking about an hour while my primary care partner runs to the grocery store. Right? Is it safe to be home alone? And there is absolutely no sort of one concrete moment where we can say, yes, now this person is not safe to live alone. Now this person is not safe to be alone for even short periods of time. It's a very individual question, and we're here to help you answer it, right? But what I've listed on the slides here for your consideration, these are the questions we, the social work team at Alzheimer's San Diego, would kind of talk you through in helping you determine, is this person safe to be alone? Would they know how to get help, and would they know when to get help if it were needed? So if you are a primary care partner to somebody who lives with dementia, ask yourself, if the smoke alarm, if they were alone and the smoke alarm started going off in the house right now, would the person that I care for know what that means? Would they know how to get themselves to safety? Would they know how to call 911, what to say, how to wait in a safe place for help to arrive? If something were to happen to you as the primary care partner, you became ill, you lost consciousness, you had a fall or an injury, would the person who's living with dementia be able to recognize that you're experiencing an emergency, know how to call for help, right? Remember Jean talking about those functional abilities, the sensory processing problems, and the fine motor skill issues. Would the person be able to call 911, describe what happened when the paramedics come? Would they be able to, how's their short-term memory? Would they remember what happened, be able to give a good medical history, wait for that help, and be a good support to you, right, during an emergency? If you have concerns that the person that either you, the person living with memory loss, or the person that you care for would not be able to do any of those things, this is not a person who, certainly not a person who should live alone, and probably not a person who should be left alone for extended periods of time. We're going to talk more about the subject of wandering in more detail here in a bit. Wandering just refers to somebody getting lost in a moment of confusion or disorientation. And if that has happened, something we know about wandering, not only is it a very high-risk behavior, once it has happened once, it's very likely to happen again. So if a person has a history of wandering in moments of confusion and disorientation, getting lost, they are likely to wander again, and this is not a person who should be left alone for long periods of time. And then this last point is very broad and kind of general, but generally speaking, if you leave the house for long periods of time, do you come back and find that they've gotten themselves into a hazardous, a dangerous, or a sticky situation? Right? Are they going into the woodshed and using tools that you don't feel comfortable with them using? Are they getting lost? Have they been a a victim of a scam, right? If you feel that they require supervision for safety when they're not alone, if you have that inkling, right, we encourage you to sort of trust those instincts. So again, there is no clear-cut moment that we can say now is the time we have to have 24/7 supervision in place, but we do know that that time will come. Alzheimer's disease, all of these types of dementia that we're talking about here, these are progressive conditions, and they unfortunately don't get better. We don't currently have a means of slowing down or stopping the progression of these symptoms. So we have to be practical in our planning and plan for a time that this person will require 24/7 supervision. That day is inevitable. So in the short term, we want everyone to have a backup plan, to have that safety net, somebody that life ring, right? That somebody who you can call in a pinch if you become sick, if you get called away in an emergency situation, and your person is having a hard day and you don't feel comfortable leaving them alone. Have that backup now, and be thinking about a time in the near future when 24/7 supervision will be required. I want to just say the future where 24/7 supervision is required doesn't necessarily refer to a time that a person living with dementia is so gravely disabled they can't do anything for themselves. We're just talking about a time that a person really needs sort of another check, another set of eyes and ears supervision rather than full-time assistance.
Amy?
Yes.
We have a question here from one of our participants. She's just saying her 90-year-old mom has Alzheimer's, and it looks like she's really kind of up all night. And the father, who is 91, of course we know that means the father is up. He's the care partner, so he's up all night too, and he's exhausted as a care partner. This participant is asking, they're trying to find someone to come in for the nights to provide some coverage and supervision of mom while she's wandering around, but it's quite expensive. Any thoughts or ideas for this participant of ours?
I would say yes. Getting some help would be some overnight supervision would definitely be the ideal solution to that. I see the other half of that question is about the use of sedatives, which is potentially quite problematic in people who are living with dementia for a variety of reasons. We'll talk about medication safety here in a bit, but that's kind of a complicated topic. But yes, using sleeping medications is generally last resort when it comes to people that are living with dementia. So for that reason, having structure, routine, getting plenty of physical exercise and activity during the day is certainly the first line response to improving somebody's sleep. I would start there. And then, yes, having another person maybe on duty to provide that supervision overnight so that your dad can get some sleep is sort of number two. It is very expensive. There's no doubt about that. We can talk with you one-on-one about potentially leveraging some kind of a natural support member of your natural support system. There are some vouchers. There are some funds that are available for respite services. Either in home or in a residential care setting. Members of our social work team can tell you about those options. Just call and we'll be happy to talk you through those. But broadly speaking, it's a great question, and it's a really important safety concern, because if somebody is up at night, everybody in that household is up at night. When you've got an exhausted caregiver, all of these safety considerations that Jean's going to start talking about now are amplified. So yes, it's an important topic. I'm glad you're concerned about your dad's well-being in this situation. We absolutely have to address issues of caregiver sleep as well.
Yeah, I would agree. And exhausted care partners just don't have the energy and the time and the focus to be able to be thinking about these safety concerns. I mean, I'm sure we've all at some point in time been in that position of being just really exhausted. And we just think about how fuzzy and muddled our thinking gets when we're that exhausted. So, yeah, it's a concern. It's a big concern. We're going to talk about several different areas here over the next little bit through the webinar. We're going to spend some time on fall prevention. Again, people with dementia are at higher risk for falls because of the changes that's going on in the brain and those changes in the visual field of vision and the sensory changes as well too that I talked about earlier. We're going to talk about injuries and medication errors. Many people, as we're getting older, are have medications, prescription medications that they are needing to take. And if we're also using any kind of over-the-counter medications, such as allergy medications or painkiller of some kind, you know, a Tylenol or something like that, or cold medicine, it's just an area ripe for problems with regards to medications. We'll talk about abuse prevention and just how people with dementia, I think we've all kind of heard of this or heard about it, people with dementia can be at high risk for all types of abuse, including financial and, you know, other types as well, emotional and physical. Driving is a big area of concern, so much so that it warrants its own webinar. Amy will be talking a little bit about firearm safety as well. And then a big focus of our safety talk here today will be on wandering. So fall prevention. Somebody's playing with my buttons and it's not me.
It's me, and I never know when it happens, and I apologize. Whenever you see that happening, know that it's me. I'm doing it on accident.
It's kind of funny. Fall prevention. This is, you know, this is a big one, and it's concerning. So how, you know, what are the things we can do to mitigate this risk factor? Number one thing is adequate lighting, and really kind of, you can't have enough lights on when you have a person living with dementia. You need to have lots of good light, and oftentimes what we have found over the course of time, you know, and through the research that people are looking at, is that some track lighting down low, for example, under the cabinets in the kitchen, where the light is actually shining on the floor, is also really helpful. It's all these kind of dark corners and shadows and such that make for a fall risk for a person living with dementia. So really good lighting is super important. We want to get rid of obstacles and clutter. If your household is a household where, you know, people, yourself perhaps as well too, you kind of stack up magazines and books on the floor, or maybe you've got a whole kind of tangled nest of power cords in some area. Get rid of those things and either get them out of the way or secure them so that they're not going to be a fall risk for anybody that's walking through that area. Think about handrails and grab bars for sure in the bathroom and in the shower, in the bathtub, and potentially, you know, you might even have a grab bar that is beside the toilet, maybe on the vanity, to be able to help somebody to, you know, lift themselves up off of the toilet. Grab bars for sure in the bathroom are very important. Also think though about handrails if you do have stairs in the house, not just a handrail on, you know, maybe what would normally, you know, kind of the open side of the stairwell, but potentially on the wall side as well, so that people can be really stable by using two handrails going up and down stairs. Look at your floor coverings and for sure be going for non-skid mats. Area rugs are kind of a big no-no because any of us, for sure, as we're getting older, and more so for people with dementia, those area rugs are, might as well call them speed bumps or whatever, trip triggers. Oftentimes toes are getting caught on the edge of the area rug, and then we're seeing people, do a fall forward. So get rid of those, get for sure the non-skid mats for any of those rugs that you may have in the house. Maintain strength, flexibility, and balance. And there's all sorts of online programs, particularly right now, that you can do some exercise routines with your person with dementia to work on maintaining strength, flexibility, and balance, for the legs, for the trunk, for the core, for the arms as well too. And I'll come back to this a little later to make a special kind of shout out for one of our own programs that happens to be taking place tomorrow. That's good for strength and balance and flexibility. So, all right. Buttons. Other household injuries. So this is where we need to be thinking about limiting access or adapting with things like appliances. Any of the kitchen countertop appliances, if you've got blenders or mixers or whatever it might be, even a toaster oven, if people are wanting to use them but are not using them appropriately or safely, then we need to potentially think about getting those maybe out of sight. Out of sight sometimes is out of mind. And also then just be thinking about sharp objects, knives. You may need to start securing knives in a safe spot. Think about sharp objects throughout the rest of the house, scissors, tools and equipment. Think about it in terms of the garage. What is in there? Are there axes? Are there other tools, hammers, things that people could hurt themselves with? And of course, any of the equipment such as drills or things like that a person has maybe used in the past that they may be looking for and wanting to use again. Disable any internal door locks so that a person can't accidentally lock themselves in a room or in a bathroom where you can't get in there to see what's going on and or to assist them. Regulate your water temperature. For your hot water heater, the temperature that is recommended that's safe is 120 degrees. Doesn't need to be any higher than that. That's 120 degrees Fahrenheit. That's going to give you plenty of hot water, but it's not going to be scalding water. Remember, people with dementia, because of the sensory changes, they may turn the hot water on for a shower. And even though maybe there's all sorts of steam coming out and that you can actually, without even putting your hand in the water, you can feel the heat. A person living with dementia may not be able to process all that. And they may step into that shower that's scalding hot. Safe chemical storage is important. Also, especially I think right now, so think about things like cleaners. Think about, yes, the Lysol, bleach. I'll bet you every household has a jug of bleach somewhere right now. Make sure that stuff is secured. You don't want it sitting on the kitchen counter where it might look like a jug of orange juice. Because there are some similarities in terms of how those jugs look. Think about other items as well too, lawn and garden pesticides. Think about first aid items like rubbing alcohol and hydrogen peroxide. I'm sure we're seeing more of that stuff in houses right now too, because it is being used as something to, kill viruses. So we just want to make sure those things are secured. And then think about food safety. And food safety is everything from if there's, out of date or, bad food in the fridge, that happens. That happens in all of our fridges sometimes. You forget about that Tupperware dish in the back corner. And, you know, for most of us, then we see it, and, oh gosh, that's been in there too long, we get rid of it. Person with dementia might just open that dish and eat it. Another thing to think about, though, too, is a person with dementia might not be cooking food properly or storing food properly. So keep that in mind. So here's a good resource for you folks to go to that will take you through a checklist, kind of room by room. It's very helpful. This is on our website, so you can see the yellow circle around alzsd.org. That's our website. And then if you go to the About Dementia, in the middle there, to the drop-down menu, down to tip sheets. And then under tip sheets, you'll see here home safety. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, the 6th one down. There we go, right there. Perfect. Have a look at that. Some really good checklists just for you to go through. Sometimes we don't think about everything. I mean, it's hard to, right? So have a look at that. That's going to give you some good ideas on the things to be looking at in your own house. Medication safety. Can't be enough said about this. For sure, you want to just be using one pharmacy for all your medications. And I'm going to say, you know, really ideally for all your over-the-counter purchases as well, too. And be communicating with your pharmacist on a regular basis about those things. Pharmacists are vastly underutilized resources in terms of medication safety. So what I suggest you do, and I do this myself, I'm on a couple of different medications. If I am maybe feeling like I've got a bit of a cold and I want to try and get some relief, so I'm looking at some cold medicines, I will take whatever product it is I'm considering up to the pharmacy counter and ask to speak to the pharmacists to see if there's any kind of interaction going to go on with the medications that I am on. And I think that's really important. And especially as we're getting older, our bodies are metabolizing medication at a different rate. We're not as efficient with it. And, you know, for our folks with dementia, boy, oh boy, it doesn't take much to exacerbate, you know, some of the symptoms that they have as a person living with dementia. So, you know, they're already got some confusion going on, and there's some over-the-counter medications or interactions that may occur that can make that confusion much worse. So, and of course, some of those interactions are also going to increase fall risk. We know some of those over-the-counter medications make us drowsy and sleepy. And you know what that leads to is we're not paying as good attention to things, and there's a higher fall risk going on with that. Use a pill organizer, and I can speak to this one personally. Amy, do you remember that story I told you about my husband and his medication error?
I do.
Mm-hmm. So he's got medications he takes, and I do too. And our dog does too. And we had a period of time where we all had our medications just on the counter in the kitchen. And you would go in the morning and take your meds. And, you know, obviously we gave the medications to our dog. He didn't reach up and take them. But anyways, one morning, my husband came down to me. I was getting ready for the day, and he said, I think I just took the dog's medication. I still laugh. I know I shouldn't, but, and that's what I did at the time he told me. And so we looked at things a little bit further, and he was like, yeah, I took the dog's medication. And it's because all our medications were all kind of in a jumble there on the counter. And So that is my story for you, telling you you need to have a pill organizer so that everybody's taking their own medications and, appropriate times as well too. And by the way, he was okay. The dog had a thyroid problem, so my husband took a thyroid medication. It was just a one-time thing. He was okay. Take your medications only as directed. It's alarming to me. I'm kind of doing a little bit of I can't find the words for it, because this has come up a few times fairly recently from a few different people I've been working with, where people are adjusting their own medications, taking less of, taking more of. Please don't do that, folks. Please, please don't do that. Take your medication as it is directed. If you've got questions or concerns about what you feel is a side effect, or you don't feel you need that much of it, get on your computer and on your phone for a check-in with your doctor. Please don't start adjusting your own dosages. That's just not a good thing. And now, Miss Amy, it's back to you.
Yes. I'll just piggyback on Jean's comments on the importance of medication safety. Jean's husband taking the dog's thyroid medicine is a perfect example of managing medications is hard enough. If you only take one medication, if you don't have any memory impairment, managing medication is hard. You layer on all of those symptoms that she walked through: memory changes, difficulty with vision, right? Your fine motor skill, knowing, is this the yellow pill? Is this the peach pill? There's so much complexity there, and medication safety is probably top of the list in terms of those early interventions, those early things, safety plans we really need to get in place early for people that are living with dementia and still living at home. And medications are not being given by, staff in a care facility, for example. Okay, so thank you for indulging me. I want to talk a little bit now about the risk of what's called elder and dependent adult abuse in the population of people who are living with dementia. Unfortunately, elder abuse is rampant. It happens to people of all ages and all ability levels, but there's lots of data out there to show us that people with dementia are at least 3 times more likely to be victims of elder abuse. And there are many different types of abuse. Some of them we're aware of. They're obviously abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, or psychological abuse. But there are some more kind of subtle forms of abuse that we just want everyone to be aware of and to feel empowered to call Adult Protective Services or call us, because we are mandated reporters here at Alzheimer's San Diego. If you have any type of concern, you don't have to have proof. If the hairs on the back of your neck are standing up on end because something about this situation makes you uncomfortable and makes you think that somebody with dementia is potentially at risk or is being victimized in one of these ways, just make the call. Calls to Adult Protective Services are held in confidentiality. Again, we are mandated reporters here at Alzheimer's San Diego, so if you have a concern, there's an easy way out. Give us a call, right? And tell us what you think might be going on. Some of these more subtle forms of elder or dependent adult abuse include what's called undue influence, wherein a person is sort of being convinced that I am the only person who really knows you and loves you. I'm the only person you can trust, and they're being isolated from other members of their support system. That is a form of abuse, and it's called undue influence. Neglect and abandonment. There's the obvious forms of neglect and abandonment, but there's also the more subtle, just a person who's totally overwhelmed with their situation and cannot deal and walks away. right? That is, that even if it's temporary, that is a form of abandonment, right? If the person is unsafe in that situation. Self-neglect is one of the two most common types of abuse in people with dementia. And this is really tricky and confusing. There's a fine line. Remember, I was talking about the dignity of risk, right? If I today make the choice that I am going to exist on nothing but Oreo cookies from here on out, that's what I'm going to eat, and that's all I'm going to eat. If I'm making an informed choice, right? I know the nutritional content of Oreos, and I understand what that's going to do to my pancreas and, other organ systems, and I'm making an informed choice to do that. I'm allowed to do that. If I have cognitive impairment that does not allow me to take in all those facts and make that informed choice, and I choose to exist only on Oreos because that's all that sounds good, that's all that I want to eat. My brain craves sugar, and so I just eat Oreos and I refuse to eat everything else. That's a form of self-neglect, right? I'm doing that not out of informed decision-making, but because I lack the capacity to make sound decisions for myself. So this is a tricky gray area, but it is important to know that self-neglect is a reportable form of abuse. And Adult Protective Services is a wonderful resource that can actually help get the wheels moving in terms of putting some more protective measures in place for somebody who's at risk and not able to live independently at home. So self-neglect and then financial abuse. These are the two most common types of abuse we see in people with dementia. So financial or material exploitation, right? Somebody who is a victim of fraud, somebody who has somebody that's actively stealing from them. There's lots of different ways that type of exploitation can occur. I want to talk specifically about a category of financial exploitation that we're seeing a lot of these days. Just to bring to your attention, there are, of course, we're in the midst of a pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and so, of course, scammers and fraudsters are taking advantage of people's fears and vulnerabilities. There are a lot of different COVID-19 specific scams that we're getting wind of through local law enforcement, grocery or cleaning scams, right? People that are saying they will take your money and go grocery shopping for you, or disinfect, your home or your supplies for you, and just taking your money and not doing those things. Testing scams. This is getting even trickier to navigate now that testing is in fact more widely available, and you can get private antibody testing, for example. It's getting harder and harder to tease out what's legitimate and what's not. I want to recommend the Federal Trade Commission's website, ftc.gov, I believe it is, where you can look up any particular treatment or test and get a read on whether or not it's legitimate. Phishing scams, of course, those are always, they always abound, but never more so than right now, where, your stimulus check, in order to get your stimulus check, right, you just need to call us back with your social security number to verify, right? That isn't how it works. Investment scams, people that are selling investments in a new breakthrough cure, for example, or, things that are going to be in high demand as a result of the pandemic. Unfortunately, lots of charitable scams going on as well. Give to this particular nonprofit or charity organizations, and all the proceeds will go to people affected by COVID-19. Right? Do your research. Check on GuideStar. Dig around before you donate to any nonprofit or charitable organization. And then, of course, just counterfeit scams. Right? Stimulus checks are lots of opportunities for scam there. So protect yourself, forwarding robocalls, unsolicited mail. I was on a call yesterday with something that's called the Alzheimer Safety Work Group, a group of local professionals dedicated to protecting the safety of people that are living with dementia. And somebody brought up a really important point when it comes to all of these phone calls, the scams as well as the robocalls. Everybody is home all day now, and we're lonely and we're bored. And so we're much more inclined to answer our phone as well as to engage in a conversation with a fraudster. So we're seeing a lot more phone fraud right now. Just be aware of that. Do your fact checking, know your sources. Again, the FTC is a wonderful resource. And on our website, alzsd.org, from every page you can get to our coronavirus resource page. And we've got a great blog post that was written on specifically on the topic of COVID-19 related scams and resources to protect yourself. Driving, as Jean mentioned, this is such a big topic. We do have a whole webinar devoted to this very subject. It's coming up later this month. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what it is, but I know it's in May. Driving and memory loss is tricky terrain. We'll just start with, as with the need for planning ahead for 24/7 supervision for a person who's living with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, we absolutely have to be thinking and planning ahead for a time that we're not going to be driving. So it's really true for all of us. Most of us, the data tells us 70% of us, with or without dementia, we're all going to outlive our ability to drive safely. Right? Driving requires a lot of physical, cognitive, reflex skills, fine motor skill, that visual field that Jean was talking about. Driving safety is an issue for all of us. It is a particular issue for people who are living with dementia. It is not to say that people who have a diagnosis of MCI or early Alzheimer's or another form of dementia can't drive. You don't automatically lose driving privileges because you've received a diagnosis. We do have a law here in California wherein a doctor does need to make a report to, it indirectly goes to the county and then goes to the DMV when a diagnosis is made. As with seizure disorders, or if a person is declared legally blind, there are some requirements, and Alzheimer's and dementia is one of those required diagnoses. But that doesn't mean the automatic revocation, loss of driving privileges. It triggers the DMV to give some kind of a response. Sometimes that response is the revocation of driving privileges, but more often than not, it's the DMV calling the person in for a driving test or a written test or both, or an administrative hearing. There are many different options. If you want to know more about the ins and outs of all of this, come to our driving and memory loss webinar. It's coming up in a couple of weeks. But in the meantime, know that it is a huge safety concern. It's a huge public health issue. The changes that Jean described, those different symptoms and the progression of those symptoms, will render every person with dementia eventually unable to operate a motor vehicle safely. It's just a harsh reality of these diseases. So work with your doctor. They can be a real support in having these hard conversations. Any one of us can contact the DMV directly and submit a request for a reevaluation. It's a very simple form you can download from the DMV's website. Share your concerns about a driver and their safety. Be clear and explicit about your concerns. And the DMV may, they don't always do it, but they may follow up on that and request that that person come in for a reevaluation. And very important, we focus a lot on this in the driving class. It's important that we not just talk about taking away driving privileges, right? We have to come to that conversation with a plan. We need an alternative because people become very isolated, very lonely, inactive, often if they have to stop driving suddenly and we don't have an alternative in place. So do come to that conversation ready to talk about local transportation alternatives. Yes, you're going to have to give up the keys, but here's what we're going to do instead. Right? And if you need help around those hard conversations, come to that class, talk to our social workers. We're here to walk you through that. Firearm safety, actually, it's a pretty closely related topic for all the same reasons, right? A lifetime of driving does not guarantee that a person with dementia can still drive safely. And so too, a lifetime of handling firearms. Maybe somebody was in law enforcement, somebody is retired military, they've got their own service weapon, they know this thing like it's an extension of their body, right? It's very, very common. But cognitive impairment from Alzheimer's disease or another form of dementia will affect, it's inevitable, it will affect a person's ability to handle a firearm safely. Think back through those symptoms that Jean talked about: difficulty with recognition, disorientation, confusion. In a moment of confusion and disorientation, if a person with dementia has ready access to a loaded firearm and somebody is in their house, right, that they in that moment do not recognize as being their caregiver, as being their much loved family member, right, this is a recipe for real disaster. So we just have to be prepared for this eventuality. So you do have some options. Firearms, like vehicles, it's very tricky. You can't just take away people's property. This belongs to them. This is their property. So just simple removal of the weapons from the house is not always possible. If you're not the spouse and you don't have legal ownership of that firearm, you cannot do it. The transfer of ownership of firearms, the laws around that are really complicated. You can't just say, "Oh, here, Jean, keep my firearm for safekeeping." You cannot do that. It's tricky. So if you can't simply remove the firearms from the home, you can do transfer of ownership through a federal gun dealer. There are many of them here in San Diego County. We can point you toward them. But in the absence of that, right, what can you do to keep the firearm safe in the house if it's just going to stay there? And often it will. The person wants to have it nearby, and it's a part of their identity and something they enjoy having around. Right? Let's talk about ways we can just keep it safe. So we can install gun locks. You see on the screen there an image of a very simple cable gun lock that goes right through the barrel. It locks with a key. This is a very simple solution. It renders the firearm unable to be discharged, and then it can just be around. The person can have full access to it. We have a really nice supply of these gun locks at our office. We can make them freely available, as many as you need, to anyone who needs them. Just call us and we'll get them to you. Or of course, if there's a gun safe, that would be another great option for keeping a firearm, and of course the ammunition stored separately. So again, a tricky topic. Ask for help, be in touch with us, or you can actually reach right out to local law enforcement. There are law enforcement strategies that can be used if necessary to eliminate a person with dementia's access to firearms.
Oop. That was me this time. All right, so we'll talk a little bit about wandering here. And wandering is a behavior that occurs in a majority of people with dementia. The research suggests 60% of people with dementia will wander and become lost at some point in time. Amy, I think you would agree with me when I say that I believe that's a low figure. It's underreported. Lots of wandering incidents take place that, are never reported to the sheriff's department or anyone else. The family finds the person. So Amy and I and many of our colleagues would agree that really it's a much higher figure than that. So who's at risk? Well, anyone with dementia is at risk for wandering behavior. And I just want to direct your attention to the right side of the slide where it's these comments. I never leave my wife alone for more than 30 minutes at a time. He or we have lived in this neighborhood for over 30 years. We know this area really well. I make sure she always tells me where she's going. And, you know, just another one that I can't tell you how many hundreds of times over the course of the years that I've been in this field that I've heard, well, he or she has never wandered before. When I bring up the topic of wandering, no, well, he's never wandered before. So people are kind of saying like, no, that's not an issue for us. Well, guess what? There's a great likelihood it's going to become an issue. You know, wandering can happen on foot or it can happen in a vehicle. We've read some of those stories, and I have personally worked with some families where, you know, folks have driven a long way from home, and folks that have driven, you know, across the border, and there's been, you know, some very frightening things that have happened. What causes wandering? Well, oftentimes it's disorientation or confusion. You think to what I had mentioned earlier, when people with dementia have, you know, lose track of time. So where that half hour becomes to them 6 or 7 or 8 hours, then maybe they're going to be out looking for, seeking you, or you as the care partner, or somebody, or perhaps they will be thinking about past activities that they did, and that's triggering the wandering behavior. And some examples of that might be somebody who thinks it's time for them to go to work. So they get up and get dressed and they take the car keys, get in the car, and they're driving to work. Or they're going to go pick the kids up after school, or whatever it might be. So memories of past activities that would be part of their routines, and it's resulting in them leaving the home and becoming lost. There may be physical needs or discomfort that are taking place. So, you know, think about it. Well, you know, I don't know where my husband is, but I'm hungry and I want to get something to eat. So I'm going to walk over to, you know, the pizza place that's there in the little neighborhood mall and get myself a slice of pizza. And the next thing you know is I'm lost and I can't find my way home. And then there's agitation or restlessness. And that's probably something that we're all experiencing more of right now, just as a result of sheltering in place with the pandemic. And, you know, that's no exception to our folks with dementia. And I think, you know, we are hearing, I think we had just yesterday an email that was a report about wandering incidents here in San Diego just recently with sheltering in place, and that there have been more. And that's kind of what we expected, that there will be more agitation or restlessness related to having to, you know, stay confined to the home much more so than we have in the past. So how do we reduce risk? Well, definitely we want to limit access to the vehicle and to the keys to the vehicle. And so don't have them sitting in a dish by the front door. And don't even have them, for example, I'm thinking about a lady I worked with a while back. Her husband with dementia was always looking to drive the car, get the keys. And she had taken his keys away from him, but she kept her set of keys to the car in her purse. Well, people with dementia aren't unintelligent, you know, and so he started looking through her purse to get the keys. And then he would go out and get in the car. So in this instance, limiting access to the keys meant, you know, really securing them, actually. So she got a little lockbox. When she came home, she put the keys in the lockbox and hid the lockbox under the bed, and then secured the, you know, I don't know if it was a combination or a key, but then she secured that. So, you know, she had to go take some extra steps here. With regards to reducing risk, think about the use of alarms or chimes, or potentially room monitors as well too. And you can go, you know, the sky's the limit here. You can go as simple as can be all the way to, you know, kind of more, well, oftentimes expensive alarm systems. I think simple sometimes is just as effective. I've had many families have gotten, you know, kind of a noisy wind chime that they hang on the inside of the door that leads, you know, the front door, for example, so that every time that door is opened or closed, there's kind of a, you know, whatever it is, the bells chiming, ringing, or whatever it is. But you could also just get some simple sensor alarms through Home Depot and motion sensors, maybe, you know, and not ones that do this loud blaring like emergency sound, but just something that makes a noise that alerts you as a care partner to that door is being opened, and it might be your person heading out the door. Move the items that suggest leaving. So, for example, you know, if you've got a little coat rack with sweaters and, you know, you leave your purse, or you've got this little dish where this is what we do in our house, where we put our keys and our cell phones by the door. I mean, that's just kind of setting things up visually as a cue to, oh yeah, here's the keys, there's my sweater, there's my hat, off I go. You know, I'm gonna head out the front door. So move those items. You can camouflage doors and doorknobs, and you can purchase things online, for example, at Amazon, where it's, you know, it's kind of like a large, super large sticky, I guess, that sticks to the inside of the door that would suggest visually that it's a bookshelf with books on it, or that, you know, it's something else. Or you can get even stop signs, it says stop, or signs that say turn around. And sometimes these types of camouflage and kind of visual suggestions that the door is something else is enough to have a person with dementia just turn the other way and walk away from the door. And doorknobs can be camouflaged too. You know, they can be painted the same color as the door, or even a simpler fix than that is whatever color the door is, go online shopping for a little pair of cheap socks, the same color, that you can slip over the doorknob, so it's just not as visually apparent. And for sure, with regards to wandering, think about unmet physical needs. You know, for any of us, if we're hungry, if we're thirsty, if we need to use the bathroom, or if we're restless, we need to move. This is what we're doing, is we're moving around the house. I'm sure everybody's doing some of that these days, where you just get that restless feeling. You don't really know what it is you want. You want something, so you're moving around, and that's no different for our folks with dementia. So if they seem like they're moving around and a little restless, offer a snack, a drink, say it's time to use the bathroom. And then take them to the bathroom, and then get them engaged in some movement as well too. So meeting physical and social needs while sheltering in place. And these are some great suggestions. And what we want to be doing is maintaining as much routine as possible. You know, obviously these are new routines, but get that routine established and, you know, really kind of stick to it every day, more or less. So, and what the routine is best to include is daily activity and time outdoors as well too. And parts of those daily activity need to be purposeful. So think about what you can have your person with dementia doing. And I often am thinking about things like get them sweeping, whether it's indoors or out. And if you don't have a, you know, straw broom, get one from Amazon, because I tell you, whether there's dirt or anything that needs to be swept or not, doesn't matter. Just get them sweeping. And other things would be outdoors is raking the grass, folding laundry, washing dishes, dusting. Things about these activities is, first of all, they are purposeful. You can be saying to your person, you can help me by doing this, by sweeping the patio, by wiping down the kitchen counters. And so they're purposeful, they involve movement, and they're very rhythmic too. And there seems to be some satisfaction in that rhythm of purposeful activity. For sure, connect with others. Do your things by Zoom, or FaceTime, or, Google meetings, or whatever it is. Get connected with your family and your friends, and make sure you have some time with others. And then we've got a whole list of some great at-home activities on our website, alzsd.org/coronavirus. And the other thing I will do a quick shout out for is exercising as well too, making sure people are busy and using their bodies and getting a little bit physically tired every day. And towards the end, again, I'll make a mention of our movement class that's going on tomorrow. So, Amy, I think you're up.
Great. I can. Wrestle control. Nope,
Yep.
That's still you, right?
Oh, gosh, it is. Forgive me. I got one ahead of myself. So here's more about just kind of the response you can do and the things you can proactively do. For sure, set up a neighborhood network of support. This is a good time to, if your neighbors don't already know that you are caring for a person living with dementia, this is a good time to let them know, so that you've got a few other eyes and ears in the neighborhood, keeping an eye out. We're all home right now, so we can keep an eye out. Keep a list of places where the person may go. If you need to enlist the support of the sheriff's department or your neighbors, it's good to be able to have a list that you can quickly copy and give to others where they can begin the search. Absolutely have a clear and recent photograph on hand. Consider the use of personal GPS systems, and we can direct you towards what some of those are through our safety tip sheet, our wandering tip sheet, that is online, but also if you just give us a call and talk to any of our social workers. And then there's some great programs that you can get enrolled in, and I think Amy is going to speak to those.
I will. Thank you, Jean. I have not seen any additional questions come in the chat, so I'm just going to keep us moving, but if you have questions, write them in there, and we'll take them at the end. So I'm going to wrap up here with an overview of some of the key resources that are out there to help you with all of these things. These are the names of a couple of our community partners, nonprofit partners here in San Diego County, who offer free help with some of these things we've been talking about. Elder Help, and their websites are listed there on screen for you, does free home safety inspections and can actually do minor home modifications like installing railings, grab bars, balance bars. It's an all-volunteer program. Of course, access to this program is likely limited at the moment because of protections around sheltering in place, but get in touch with them. If something is urgent, there may be some accommodations that can be made, but good to get familiar with these resources. Now, JFS, the Jewish Family Service of San Diego, and Interfaith Community Services, they sort of split a county contract for what's called the Fix-It service, doing home safety checks, making those minor repairs, and again, minor home modifications, all provided free of charge. So JFS's program covers San Diego and South, and Interfaith Community Services covers the North County. So depending upon where you are, reach out to one of those organizations if you need help around that. Medical Alert, this is a program most of us are probably pretty familiar with. These are the wearable, the pendants or the bracelet goes, that tells somebody that you have a medical condition in the event that you were not able to communicate in a medical emergency. Well, memory loss is a medical condition as well, and we really encourage folks to enroll in the Medical Alert San Diego program. Their website is there. Actually, if you go to our website, you can get a code on the safety page of our website. There's a code there to get a reduced rate for the jewelry and the enrollment in that program. We really encourage every person who's living with memory loss to be enrolled in the Medical Alert website, but we also encourage primary care partners to be enrolled in this program. If somebody relies on you for primary support and something happened to you, would a first responder know that, right? Would they know that there's somebody back at home they need to go check on? So having some form of identification of yourself as a care partner is a really great idea. Medical Alert is a very easy way, it's a very affordable way to do that. Take Me Home is a regional a database that is operated by the San Diego Sheriff's Department. It's an information system hosted on their secure server. It's free, it's county-wide. It's a really remarkable wandering response program. Take Me Home, you see the URL there, sdsheriff.net/TMH for Take Me Home. It's a fairly simple online enrollment process. You can also print up an application and do it by paper if you prefer. And you submit a good close-up photograph of your face if it's you who has the memory issue or the person with dementia. Upload that to their site, and in the event that somebody who's got memory impairment or other sensory disorder, this is wonderful for people with autism as well, in the event that that person got lost, their information goes right out through this database out to the local law enforcement jurisdiction, countywide, whoever it is. If they're in Chula Vista, Oceanside, Alpine, their information goes out as well as that photograph so that law enforcement can start that search immediately, and they've got good facts to go from. All information about all of these programs, as well as like the home safety checklist, the GPS device list that Jean mentioned, information about how to obtain a gun lock through us, wandering prevention tips, lots of great information available on the safety section of our website, which you see listed there.
So we're winding down here, folks. So these are all the programs and services that we are currently offering everybody here in San Diego County. Our social workers are answering the phones Monday through Friday, 8:30 to 5 p.m. That has continued through this time of the pandemic, and we are still there, so don't hesitate. There have been a few questions here today that I have directed folks to call and just ask to speak to a social worker. We've really got a wealth of knowledge amongst the team and with resources available to us as well too. So please tap into that. We've got online support and discussion groups, and more than a dozen of them. And that list is growing all the time. We've got movement and motion, and tomorrow morning at 10 a.m., we will have an online movement and motion class with this really fantastic lady who will lead us by video through safe and easy and fun exercise videos. And so I really encourage you to do that. I mean, all you got to do, folks, is get yourself in front of your computer, your monitor, and click on the Zoom app. You can go to our website for this too, alzsd.org. And you'll be able to have a nice little workout session for yourself and your person with dementia, and with some great music and with some fun. We have online education going on weekly with webinars with myself and with Amy. And I think we've got another slide where we will tell you what's coming up in the next week or so. Our All's Companion visits are meeting virtually, and this has been very successful. People are really happy with this. We now have some masks that we can distribute that have been made for us by many of our fantastic volunteers. And if you're interested in these masks, which are reusable, they can be cleaned, washed, please just shoot us an email or give us a call, and we'll get your information and get those masks out to you. We have a terrific volunteer tech team, and we've had Chelsea with us here today, and we're very grateful for her assistance. This volunteer tech team is helping all of us out, and it's just making things go a little easier for us with our online services. We are a 100% local nonprofit, and every dollar that is contributed to us stays here in San Diego County to support the programs and services we provide to this community that we live in and that we love. So we're happy to be of assistance to people however we can be, and we really want you to reach out and use the resources we have here. So there it is. Visit our website for information and resources. Explore it a little bit. We do have those tip sheets that we've talked about a couple of times here today. And again, that's where you'll find information on our classes, as well as this movement and motion class tomorrow as well. And you can call us or email, or you can live chat as well too. And we'll get you connected. And if you don't really know what you need, you still call us. We can help you maybe identify what it is that you need. And maybe sometimes you just need us to listen. And we're ready and willing to do that too. So there's our number, and there's our website. So we really would love your feedback on how we're doing. So Amy's going to send out a survey for you to do online. Oh, I see she just sent out.
It just went out. Zoom is a little funny. Sometimes that link is live. You can just click it and you'll go right to it. And sometimes you have to copy it and paste it into a browser window.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. And I see you sent out the tomorrow's movement in motion as well too. Thank you. Mm-hmm. And to request a copy of the slides from today's presentation, just shoot us an email at education@alzsd.org. And here we are with our upcoming programs for next week. Coping with Personality and Behavior Change. This is for Care Partners. That's next Thursday at 10 a.m. And then the following week, Home Care, Daycare, and Memory Care, what you need to know, on Tuesday, May 19th. So we thank you for joining us here today. And as you know, I think I've said in a couple of webinars, I say it's good to see you. Well, I can't see you, but again, I know you're there. And that just makes me feel good. So you all take care,